Good morning, Morai Rabotai. We are continuing on Masechet Chagigah, and we are at the very bottom of the Amud Bet 8b, going to our Amud today, Tet Amud Aleph, and the Limud of Amud Yomi has been anonymously sponsored for Refuah Shelema of Chai ben Sarina, that should have Refuah Shelema. It's undergoing a very serious operation, and ask everyone to daven for him, a very special person in the community. Should have Refuah Shelema. Amen. So we are in the middle of discussion of whether or not a person could bring two korbanot or two sets of korbanot, half of them the first day, half of them the second day. If the example of the Gemara was, if you have 10 animals, can you bring 5 of them the first day, 5 of them the second day? And we seem to have a machloket amoraim, and then the Gemara said, no, there is no machloket really. The difference is how it came about. If on the first day you set yourself up to bringing 10 korbanot, but then it didn't happen, then the second day you could bring the rest of them that you didn't get the chance to finish up. But if you brought 5 korbanot first day, and tomorrow morning you wake up and say, it was very great, now let's bring another 5, that's too late. But if it was withheld from you because of a reason, then is fine. And we brought a braita that indicated the same thing. Now the last line basically is going to say one more time, confirming the same idea. Itmar nami amar Rav Shimon bar Abba, learned in the name of Rav Shimon bar Abba, in the name of Rabbi Yochanan himself, who was the Baal Memra yesterday. Lo shanu elam shelo gamar. We only mentioned this when you didn't get to finish your korbanot. Aval gamar chozer umakriv. My gamar, it says we only say you can't bring more when you didn't finish. But when you finish, then you could bring more. The Gemara says, what do you mean you finished? Finished what? Gemara says, my gamar. Ilema gamar korbanotav. If you mean to say gamar means you finished bringing your korbanot, says the Gemara, my makriv, you finished. What do you mean you bring more? You just told me you finished your korbanot. So therefore, it couldn't mean that. Says the Gemara, elo shelo gamar hayom. What he means is, when he didn't finish the day, shelo gamar hayom. But if the day finished, aval gamar hayom, in other words, you had your 10 korbanot and you are looking to bringing more, in that case that you brought korbanot and the day finished, so to speak, that now you don't have time to bring 5 of them, at night you can't bring korbanot, then chozer, then you go back tomorrow and you finish up the amount of korbanot that you had in mind, aval gamar hayom, when the day finished on you, so to speak, chozer umakriv, you go back and you could bring the rest of your korbanot. Now, this brings us to really next Mishnah, which the entire Mishnah is talking about making up. When you didn't get the chance to bring the korbanot, we have a concept of tashlumin. Tashlumin means you make up, a make-up time, a makeover. So says the Mishnah, Mi shelo chag beyom rishon shel chag. If you couldn't bring the korban chagigah the first day of Yom Tov, says the Mishnah, chogeg et kol haregel. You could make over the entire chag. And not only the entire chag, the Yom Tov ha'acharon shel chag. And even the Yom Tov ha'acharon shel chag. Chag, in the Mishnaic language, is a reference to Chag HaSukkot, right? So Yom Tov ha'acharon shel chag is Shmini Atzeret. Unlike Pesach, which both the first half, what we call the first half, and what we call the second half or the last half, both of them are Chag HaPesach. On Sukkot, we have a very interesting phenomenon. We have the first day, Yom Tov. And then we have Chol HaMoed. And then Sukkot drops. And you have a brand new Yom Tov called Shmini Atzeret. Right? Which we're going to speak about this strange phenomenon in this Gemara, the Mishnah. But nevertheless, the Mishnah is telling us not only you could bring all of the days of Chag HaSukkot, you could also bring a makeover for the first day of Sukkot on the last day Yom Tov, which is Shmini Atzeret. So you could make it up on Shmini Atzeret. Avar HaRegel. But if the Chag HaSukkot and Chag Shmini Atzeret passed, Velo Chag, and you didn't bring your Korban Chagigah, Eno Hayav B'Achrayuto. Then you no longer have the responsibility to bring it. Well, you couldn't bring it, right? We're talking about the case that was honest. It's not the case that he's sitting and sipping wine and says, I'll go tomorrow. It's a case that you no longer hayav b'acharayutom, and on this it says, me'uvat lo yochal litkon, v'chisaron lo yochal lehimanot. Shlomo HaMelech says in Kohelet, sometimes you have something that gets ruined, gets crooked, and that no longer could be counting. And chisaron, we have something that's missing, which is our case over here. You're missing a mitzvah of Chagigah b'Yom Tov. Lo yuchal lehimanot. It's not, cannot be filled again, cannot be counted again, and therefore you lost on the mitzvah of Chagigat Yom Tov. Rabbi Shimon ben Menasya Omer, Rabbi Shimon ben Menasya says, Ezehu me'uvat she'eno yochal litkon. What is the first half of Pasuk referring to? That me'uvat, something that became twisted, crooked, cannot be fixed. Ze haba al ha'erva ve'holid mimena mamzer. That's a person that had illicit relations and created a reality of a mamzer in the world. And that cannot be fixed. Why? Because im tomar begoned vegozel, if somebody stole, yachol hu lachzir. Gonev usually is a reference to when you hide and you steal. Gozel usually is by force. And stealing, you could return. There is even a law, it's a law of hanitak la'aseh. That means the Torah says don't steal. But if you stole, you have to return the gezelah asher gazal. You have to return it. So you have a process of tshuva. You could undo what you did wrong. You could undo what you did wrong. V'yiten, you could be choser, v'yiten, but over here by a mamzer, there's no reversing it. The Mesilad Yesharim, in his genius, when he speaks about the concept of tshuva, he actually, without mentioning this, he uses this concept of the Mishnah, saying how tshuva is a chesed from HaKadosh Baruch Hu, because in reality, you can't always reverse what you did. Hareh shebal eshet ish, writes the Mesilad Yesharim. A person, this is Mishnah, basically. A person that created a mamzer. So then you're going to come to shul, right? And say, hatati, aviti, tears rolling down the cheek. The mamzer is walking around. You created the reality of Ra in the world, which you cannot undo. The second example is you killed somebody. He's dead. You could be crying, but he's dead. So how you got? So says the Mesilad Yesharim, this is a chesed from HaKadosh Baruch Hu, that he considers akirat ratzon, that when your original will to do the wrong thing that you did, the decision that was made and the action that was carried, you have remorse about it, that remorse and the uprooting of the ratzon, of the will, and the decision that was there, HaKadosh Baruch Hu considers it as akirat maaseh, as if it never happened. That means you go back and watch the movie of the world, and you didn't do that. The mamzer is walking out, had no connection to you, which is a tremendous chesed, undoing reality of the world. But really, this is what the Mishnah is saying over here, that in some level, me'uvat lo yochal litkon is reference to creating that reality. So now we have to really talk about the Mesillat Yesharim versus the simple understanding of the Mishnah that's me'uvat lo yochal litkon. We'll see how much we get time. Be'ezrat Hashem, Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai disagrees with this whole assertion. Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai says, no. That's not me'uvat lo yochal litkon. What does me'uvat mean? Twisted, bent, crooked. Something that was straight and now has been made crooked. Me'uvat, it comes from ivut. And it cannot be a reference to something that was always crooked. So therefore, it's not referring to the above mentioned examples. We only could say me'uvat to something that was metukan in the beginning, that was straight and it was good. And afterwards, it became bent, it became twisted, it became crooked. You ready for this? A person that was connected with Torah and now stopped his connection. It could be a person that was going to shiur and stopped going to the shiur. A person that had a connection of any sort with the Torah and he let go of that connection. That is me'uvat lo yuchal litkon. And based on the Yerushalmi says, I wrote this as was a teenager, and it's fine. Yerushalmi really says this. Yerushalmi says on the pasuk, "Im ta'azveni yom yomayim azveka." From the language of the Torah says, "If you leave me one day, I'll leave you 2 days." Right? It's like in physics, you have the concept of mirrors and images. Right? Every step that you take towards a mirror, you and your image are becoming 2 steps closer. And when you step farther, it becomes doubly hard. And if you say, Yomai Mazveka, that will be tripled, really, right? So Hashem Tzilecha, Hashem is your image. You have to realize that when you leave it, it leaves you as well. And that's me'uvat, lo yochal litkon, says Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. So says the Gemara. How in the world do we know this? Now, this Menah Hamili, 2 words are 3 words. They're very loaded, because what it means is like this. I understand that you could be making over the korbanot during the Chag. I'm okay with 7 days of Sukkot, 7 days of Pesach. Oh, fine. But where did you pull out this concept of making up Chag Sukkot in Shmini Chag Atzeret? How do you get that? I mean, the Gemara says in Masechet Sukkah that Shmini Atzeret regel bifnei atzmo, the language of the Gemara is in Daf Mem Chet. It's a complete different Chag. If in the Tfilah of Shmini Atzeret you say B'yom Chag Sukkot, what happens? You have to go back and daven all over again. You're not yotzeh by saying it. It needs its own shechianu, its own kid, everything. Right? And Gemara counts all the things that you have to keep separate on Shmini Atzeret to make sure it's regel bifnei atzmo. So if it is regel bifnei atzmo, how in the world can I make up Chag Sukkot and Shmini Atzeret? And if I could do that, maybe I should be able to do that after Shmini Atzeret also then. Because what's the difference? And the Gemara is going to ask that actually. Says the Gemara, how do we know this? Amar Rabbi Yochanan, Mishum Rabbi Ishmael. Rabbi Yochanan, who is an Amora, and it will become important to note, in the name of Rabbi Ishmael, says, Ne'emar Atzeret B'Shvi'i Shel Pesach v'Ne'emar Atzeret B'Shemini Shel Chag. We have what we call a Gezerah Shava. A Gezerah Shava is something you cannot necessarily make yourself. It has to be from a source that you have the Kabbalah from Moshe Rabbeinu. But at the same time, you sometimes could ask questions on it. How does it work? You have an identical word in 2 different psukim, and the limud of Gezerah Shava from Moshe Rabbeinu would be that you see this word here and this word here, is coming to connect and link these two psukim together, teaching you that the concept of this pasuk, halachically or conceptually, applies also to this pasuk and vice versa. For instance, the way we know that you have to eat a kazait of bread in the sukkah the first night of sukkah, it doesn't say it in the Chumash, it's in Mitzvah D'Oraita. It's Gezerah Shavah Tetvav from Leil Pesach, right? And so on and so forth. We have by Get Shichrur, but many concepts in the Gemara are learned from this idea of Gezerah Shavah. Now, not every Gezerah Shavah is the same, because, and this is the complexity of today's limud, the Gezerah Shavah, even though that's from Moshe Rabbeinu linked down, and you find sometimes the Gemara says, oh, he didn't darshan this Gezerah Shavah. Why? Because he didn't accept it from his Rabbi. It has to be like, I accepted from my Rabbi from his Rabbi from his Rabbi until Moshe Rabbeinu. Right? Rambam counts from Moshe Rabbeinu to himself in the Hakdama of his Sefer, and it's not even that many generations, 40 generations, right? It's not crazy. But and that's Rambam. This is much closer, 1,000 plus years closer to the Moshe Rabbeinu. So they had to have this, and if you didn't have it, you didn't have it. But the Gemara said we could deal with it. You can't initiate a Gezerah Shavah, but you could deal with it in asking questions if it's not mufne. What does that mean? That means sometimes you have a pasuk, two psukim, and every word in the pasuk A and pasuk B are needed for the pasuk itself. You can't take any words out. But there are two identical words in this pasuk and that pasuk, and there you have a Gezerah Shavah. That is called a Gezerah Shavah that is not mufne, is not the words of the Gezerah Shavah, the two identical words are not available, so to speak. They are used for what they have to mean in the pasuk, in the context itself. And therefore, in that case, it has to be, the Gezerah Shavah has to be perfect. If you could ask any question showing that they are not comparable, then the Gezerah Shavah falls. You can't have a Gezerah Shavah like that. But then you have a Gezerah Shavah that's mufne. That means the word is available. And it's coming to teach you the Gezerah Shavah. In that case, even if you have logical discourse of questioning on how they are not completely identical, we ignore the questions because say Hashem is coming to teach you that this is identical with that. Leave your questions. The word is there only for the Gezerah Shavah. So therefore, you don't get to ask questions on it. And even there's difference between mufne mitzad echad, mufne mishte stadim is only one of the words of Gezerah Shavah. One of the psukim, that word is available, and the other one is not, or maybe two of them. That gets already beyond the degree of this little talk right now. It's certainly beyond the scope of our talk right now. But this is what the Gemara is going to be discussing. So says the Gemara, you know how we know that you could bring a makeover korban on Shemini Atzeret, making up for the first day of Sukkot, even though the Shemini Atzeret is a completely different chag, and I would for sure not say that, you know, because of the Gezerah Shavah. Where is the Gezerah Shavah? Says the Gemara, Nemar Atzeret B'Shvi Shel Pesach. Let's read the pasuk about the last day of Pesach. The pasuk says, Sheshet Yamim Tochal Matzot. 6 days you eat matzot, the first 6 days of Pesach. Ubayom Hashvi, on the 7th day of Pesach, Atzeret LaHashem Elokecha is Atzeret, and Lo Ta'aseh Melacha, don't do any work. That's the first pasuk about Pesach, last day of Pesach. And says the Gemara, V'nemar Atzeret B'Shemini Shel Chag. About Shemini Atzeret also, we call it Shemini Atzeret, right? It's called Atzeret in Chumash. It's called Shiv'at Yamim Takrivu Ishel Hashem. You should bring Korban Ishel Hashem 7 days. Bayom HaShemini Mikra Kodesh Yelachem. The 8th day is going to be a Mikra Kodesh, which means a Yom Tov. Ve'ikraftem Ishel Hashem, and you bring Korban Ishel Hashem. What day is that? The definition of the day is Aseret Hi Kol melechet avodah lo ta'asu. Is an aseret, don't do any work. Hence, Shemini Atzeret. So you have aseret here, you have aseret there. Gezerah Shavah, just like in the 7th day of Pesach, you agree with me, says the Gemara, that you could bring a makeover korban for the 1st day of Pesach. So too, the 8th day of Sukkot, which is really not Sukkot anymore, this 8th day, which we call it Shemini Atzeret, you could also bring a makeover korban for the 1st day of Sukkot. That's why Gezerah Shavah. So far, so good. I love the faces. Everyone understands it. Great. So says the Gemara, just like over there by 7th day of Pesach is Tashlumin, over here also is Tashlumin. The Gemara says, Mufne, it has to be that this Gezerah Shavah is Mufne. That means the words are available. Because if this would not be a Gezerah Shavah Mufne, boy, I have a question on this. It makes logically no sense. Says the Gemara, the ilav mufnei, if it was not available, the words of aseret, you could be porech, you could ask question. By Shvi shel Pesach, it is Shvi shel Pesach. It's the 7th day of Pesach, still Pesach. It's the same Yom Tov. You want to compare that with Shemini Atzeret, who is different than Sukkot, is a completely different Chag? You can't do that. Just like you can't say, well, because I could bring it on 7th day Pesach, I could bring it on Shavuot. Well, Ramban actually writes on Chumash that Shavuot is Yom Tov Acharon Shel Pesach, right? And all of the days of Omer are like a long, elongated period of Chol HaMoed. So a lot to talk about. We will talk about that. But can you say, well, I bring on Shavuot? No, it's a different Yom Tov. So I would have never, in my right mind, logically compared the last day of Sukkot, which is Shemini Atzeret, with the last day of Pesach. And therefore, you need a Gezerah Shavah that is Mufne, is available. Now, how is it available? The Gemara says, I'll tell you how it's available. Gemara says, lie. Indeed, it is mufne. Be'emet, says Rashi. Afnuye mufne, it's completely mufne. For both sides it is even in this case. Why? Because michdi, my atzeret. What does the word atzeret mean? Rabotai? Atzeret means atzor. Don't do work. Stop. Right? So why do you have to tell me atzeret, which means atzor, don't work? Isur melacha and Yom Tov. Asor be'asiyat melacha. Stop from doing work. Haketiv, it says in both psukim afterwards, it says, lo ta'aseh melacha. In the first pasuk, let's read it again together about Shvi shel Pesach. It says, Ubayom hashvi atzeret la'Hashem Elokecha. What are the next coming words? Lo ta'aseh melacha. So you already told me lo ta'aseh melacha. Why do you say atzeret? Right? Says the Gemara. Haketiv lo ta'aseh melacha. You already told me at the end of the pasuk lo ta'aseh melacha. Atzeret tichtiv dekatam rachmana lama. Why do you have to write the word atzeret? It's extra. It's superfluous. Says the Gemara. It's coming to teach you that this is coming only for the Gezerah Shavah purpose of it. Period. It happens to be the Gemara doesn't discuss it by Shmini Atzeret. By Shmini Atzeret, you have the same thing. Let's read the pasuk at the end of the pasuk that we brought for Shmini Atzeret in Vayikra Chaf Gimel. Says the pasuk, "Veikraftem mishel Hashem." This is Vayom Hashemini Mikra Kodesh Yeh Lachem. Veikraftem mishel Hashem. You bring a korban. Atzeret he. It is atzeret. What are the next pasukim? Next word in the pasuk. Kol melechet avodah lo tasu. Do not do any work. So you told me already, kol melacha lo tasu. You told me already, kol melechet avodah lo tasu. Why do you have the word? Aseret must be is coming only to link this pasuk with that pasuk and telling you that you can make over the last day of Sukkot, which is Shmini Atzeret, the korban that you had to bring the first day of Sukkot, which is a different chag. Okay, so that's our limud so far. This was Rabbi Yochanan saying in the name of Rabbi Ishmael, who is a Tana, but Rabbi Yochanan himself is an Amora, right? In Tosafot in Tuvot, Tafchet says, according to everybody, is not Tana Upali, right? We have some of the Amoraim really won the Rav, that even though that Rav is an Amoravi, if we are back against the wall and we can't explain the Shita of Rav, how he's arguing with the Tanaim, and we have no other option, then what I would say, well, Rav Tanahu Upalik. Rav could take on a Tana because he, generally speaking, is Amora, but he was too close to the generation of Tanaim. He was the best Talmid of Rabbeinu Akadosh, like the Gemara says in Masechet Chulin Daf Kuf Lamed Zayin, that Rabbi Yochanan himself used to call Rav his Rebbe. He said, "Itli Rav beBavel." I have a rabbi. My rabbi lives in Bavel. Even though the Rabbi Yochanan in Masechet Brachot Daf Hey, we learned that he would make fun of people who lived in Chutz La'aretz. He was a very big. He was very strong on living in Eretz Yisrael, that he can't even have longevity in Chutz La'aretz, and so on and so forth. But the Maseh, he said, my rabbi lives in Bavel. And also, the Gemara goes on to say there that Shmuel also was a much bigger personality of Torah than Rabbi Yochanan, which actually begs the question, why is it that even Rav and Shmuel combined together versus Rabbi Yochanan? Halakha is like Rabbi Yochanan. That's a separate question. But nevertheless, Rav Tana Upalik. Rabbi Yochanan is not the Tana. So therefore, the Gemara says that was from an Amora, from Rabbi Yochanan. But if you want to learn it from a Tana, the Tana brings the same halacha that you could bring the makeover korban for Sukkot and Shmini Atzeret from a different source. The Tana Maitila Mehacha. It brings it from this place. The Tanya we learned in the Braita. So we don't know who is the Tana, what's the Tana, right? Versus an Amora. In Braita it says, V'chagotem oto hak l'Hashem shivat yamim, that you should celebrate it, Shivat Yamim, in front of Hashem. Chukat Olam ledorotechem b'chodesh hashevi tachogu oto. Now this is talking about Sukkot, of course, right? 7 days in the 7th month, right, which is Chodesh Tishrei. Says the Gemara, Yachol yeheh chogeg veholech. This is actually important to note. Every word of the pasuk over here means something. Says the Gemara. Let's see if we don't need to write this up and just explain it in our minds. You should have the full pasuk actually on the side of your Gemara. We're going to need almost every word of the pasuk over here. Says the Gemara, Yachol yeheh chogeg veolech kol shiv'ah. When the pasuk says v'chagotem oto. These are the words, the beginning words of the pasuk. V'chagotem oto chag l'Hashem shivat yamim. You should celebrate this a chag 7 days, which seems to indicate I'm celebrating all the 7 days. So can I be bringing korban chagigah every one of the days of the 7 days? Yachol yeh chogeg ve'olech kol shiv'ah. Talmud domar oto. It says no. Chagotem oto. The oto, which is a finger pointing, so to speak, that is coming to tell you, no, you do one. You only do once, 1 day, but not all of the 7 days. So says the Gemara, so why do you say 7 days then? If it's only 1 day, so this is 1 day. Why do you say Chagotem oto Chag l'Hashem Shivat Yamim? Says the Gemara, is coming to tell you that Tashlumin, that all the Shivat Yamim, the first 7 days, you could make over the Korban if you couldn't get to bring it the first days. So you could make it up. And how do you know that if I couldn't do it the first days, you could do second day, third day, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, and you could even do 8th? Yom Tov Acharon. How do I know that I could do Yom Tov Acharon of Sukkot, which is really Shemini Atzeret? So it's our question. And this is a Braita, so it's a Tanaic source. Says the Gemara, because it says, B'chodesh HaShevi'i. I know what you're talking about. I know we're holding in Tishrei. Why do you have to say B'chodesh Hashvi'i is coming to add something I would not have added by just reading Shivat Yamim, which means only Chag HaSukkot, up until Shemini Atzeret? B'chodesh Hashvi'i tachogu oto. It says B'chodesh Hashvi'i tachogu. Why do you have to say B'chodesh Hashvi'i tachogu? Which is another language of bringing Korban Chagigah in the 7th month. You already told me when to bring it. What are you adding? Is adding the 8th day, which is a Yom Tov Acharon, Shmini Atzeret, says the Gemara. So says the Gemara now, wait a second. If you're using the word B'chodesh Hashvi'i in the month, the 7th month of Tishrei, so maybe he's coming to add not just one day of the Shmini Atzeret, but maybe he's coming to add that Hazaku Baruch, the whole month, you could do it. Right? So if B'chodesh Hashvi'i, Yachol Yeh Chogeg V'olech Kol HaChodesh Kulo, says Gemara, Talmud Omar Oto. The pasuk says Oto again for no apparent reason, because at the end of the pasuk it says V'chagotem. There are twice that Oto is mentioned, right? So this is not a reference to the previous Oto. This is a second one. So let's read the pasuk again. Bayom hashemini aseret yeh lachem. Yes. Kol melechet avodah lo tasu. Then it says v'chagotem oto chag laHashem. That's the first oto, chagotem oto. That means first day you bring it, and then if you can't, shivat yamim, right? 7-day makeover. This is the flow of the pasuk. Chagotem oto means the first day you have to bring a korban chagigah. Chag laHashem. Shivat yamim means if you didn't make it the first day, you could make over every day of the 7th day, the 7 days of Sukkot. Shivat yamim. V'hashana chukat olam ledorotechem b'chodesh hashvi'i tachogu. That means you could even do it on Shmini Atzeret, which is in 7th month. Tachogu oto. He's saying oto again to say only Shmini Atzeret. But you missed Shmini Atzeret, like our Mishnah said, en chayav b'achrayuta. You missed it. That's it. Chisaron lo yochal leimanot. You cannot make it over again. So you have a Tanaic source from a clear Braita that asks and answers our question. Now, how in the world can you bring a makeover korban of Chag HaSukkot and Shmini Chag Atzeret, which the Gemara says in Sukkot, Daf Mem Chet, is a regel bifnei atzmo? We have an answer. So says the Gemara now, Oto ata chogeg, that day of the 8th day of Shmini Atzeret, you could make over. The ata chogeg chutzalo. You cannot go further than that. You missed Shmini Atzeret, you have missed Chagigat Sukkot, Chag HaSukkot, and it cannot be fulfilled anymore. Now the Gemara says, Umay tashlumin. What is this tashlumin business? Right? Now, there are 2 ways of understanding tashlumin. Give me your minds and your hearts for just a moment. I love it. So it says, the Gemara is going to bring Machloket Amoraim, that tashlumin could be, Hashem said, bring the korban first day. And everything is about this first day over here. If you miss it, you could make this up on the 2nd day. You could make this up on the 3rd day. You could make this up on the 4th day. But it's only this. If you somehow take this out of the picture, the entire chiyuv of your bringing korban chagigah vanishes, drops. Or you could understand like this. Hashem said, bring korban chagigah. You could bring it the first day, hazaku baruch. You couldn't bring it the first day, 2nd day becomes your chag. Tashlumin means you could, now it's a chiyuv. It's not that, well, I'm making up for the first day. No, I have an obligation of bringing korban chagigah and Sukkot. If the first day I couldn't bring it, the 2nd day becomes the day. The 3rd day becomes the day. The language of the Gemara is it tashlumin leyom rishon? Are we making up the first day's chiyuv, or tashlumin zeh lazeh? Each one of them is a tashlumin for the other one. That means there's nothing specifically special about the core obligation of korban when it comes to the first day. If the first day didn't exist, the 2nd day becomes it. The 3rd day becomes it. What's the difference? It's a very clear difference. The difference is if somebody, for some reason, was patur on the first day. He fell and he cracked his foot open. He can't go first day. So first day he was what? Say it? Patur. He was absolved the first day. Now, second day, comes goes to Chacham Netaneli, puts his hand on, boom, that's it, he gets up. So now, is he mechuyav or not? So if you say, Kulam tashlumin lerishon, then he's patur. Because the first day he was patur, the chiyuv, the obligation dropped. You're no longer chayav. Even though that you're, Sora Morogon Day is healthy and happy and this, you don't have to bring a korban. But if you say there are tashlumin zeh lazeh, then the first day you were absolved, second day you're good. That's your chiyuv. And that's the difference the Gemara is going to bring as the Gemara. Let's read it quickly. Says the Gemara. They're all the tashlumin for the first day. Rabbi Oshaya amar tashlumin zeh lazeh. Rabbi Oshaya says no. Each one of them is a tashlumin for the other one. My benai. What's the difference between them? What's the nafkamina? If a person was lame in the first day, he was injured the first day, and he couldn't walk, he was a chiger, and then nitpashet b'yom sheni, he was healed the second day. That is the difference. According to Rabbi Yochanan amar tashlumin lerishon kevan delo chazi berishon. Once he's not fit to bring the korban the first day, his patur is absolved from the bringing of the korban. Lo chazi b'sheni. That's it. The second day, even though that he's completely healthy and well, he is no longer going to be bringing tashlumin, korban. But Rabbi Oshaya says, no. Who says? Tashlumin zeh lazeh. Each one of them is a maker for the other one. Even though that the first day he was not fit, as soon as he becomes fit, during the first 7 days of the Chag, he's good to go, and he could make over because that day becomes his day of obligation. Chazi b'sheni, he could become fit for the second day, and he could bring it. And the Gemara now is going to ask a question on Rabbi Yochanan, which challenges this concept, because we learned basically that Rabbi Yochanan is saying if the first day you're not fit, you no longer deal with that korban. And the Gemara is going to go through a very complex but extremely interesting sugya of Nazir, a person that became a Nazir Tameh, a Nazirite that became encountered Tum'ah, and now he has to restart the process and bring a korban. From there you see that Rabbi Yochanan holds that even in the case that you were not fit, you will bring a korban, and the Gemara has to contrast the two Rabbi Yochanans and come with a fascinating answer, which we will see Be'ezrat Hashem in the days to come.
My mind is melting.